Chapter 30, R1 Guttural Alef's special cases. Also, I call this a pay Alef. Sometimes instead of using, I use the term R1 Alef or R1 Guttural and so forth. Sometimes you'll see in the literature pay Guttural or pay Alef. And again, remember, it's built upon a root pa'al. So here's the pay Alef, or the say ayin guttural or lamed guttural. This would be R1, this would be R2, and R3 in the language that I use, but I just wanted to point that out to you. But in this chapter, what we're going to do is look at R1 Alef special cases. There are certain verbs which only in the call imperfect act differently that we have to take note of. And I list the verbs that do that here in section 1. Amar, achal, avad, afa, ava, and achaz. Those verbs, occasionally achaz I should say, those verbs are special case verbs, so that in the call imperfect we have to treat these differently than your normal R1 guttural verbs. And you can see the weaknesses or the sicknesses of the verbs, the infirmities of the verbs. And there's two major infirmities, and one happens with the preformative vowel, that the original long A goes to a long O, and also we have thematic vowel dissimilation. So we have two problems that's going to affect both the first and the second syllable. But again, this is just in the call imperfect, not hifil or any place else. So if you look at section 3, we look at some of the remedies that we're going to do. And the first form I show you is a 1CS form. And let me do that. This is the original form here. And what happens here is that the Alef, the R1 Alef, is in the silent schwa position. And so as you remember, this can be a time when the Alef quiesces. And that's exactly what happens. And so when this Alef quiesces, or becomes quiet, what happens is, of course, you write nothing under that Alef. And now the performative Alef is in a position where it's going to lengthen to a long kametz by compensation. When this Alef dies, the original patach lengthens. But then what happens is this long A goes to long O, which is very common in Hebrew. And so that's where you get this O. And that O, that holum there, is going to be something that you're going to see throughout these special case forms. And so basically, this holum is going to be your problem that you're going to basically have to insert after your performative for these special case forms. The next problem, of course, is going to be the dissimilation of the vowel here. This vowel here is not to be read as a kametz, but a kametz chatuf. But now what you have is two sounds that are very identical, you see. You have the holum in the first syllable, and now you have a kametz chatuf in the second syllable. And this is not going to work in Hebrew. And even when the accent would fall upon it, you'd have two holums. This is not going to work at all. And so what you're going to have here is a dissimilation. And in the example I'm giving you here, we're going to have to change this vowel here. But at this stage, we're going to work on that later. Right now, we're just worried about the performative. You get this performative holum. And now let me just rewrite this word. Okay, so this is a kametz chatuf. We're going to change it later. We have this holum, and now what happens just in the 1CS form is this Alef disappears. They don't even write it. Now usually when Alef quiesces in Hebrew, at least in the Hebrew Old Testament, the Alef will be kept in as a historic spelling, but not in this case. It goes away. But if we were to do another form, suppose we were to do the 3MS form. And again, the development is the same way, namely the Alef of the root in the silent schwa position quiesces. You lengthen to long kametz here, and then the long A becomes O by what's commonly called a Canaanite shift. And so that's why you have this holum here. And so again, this time we won't drop the aleph. Only in the 1CS do we drop the aleph of the root. Otherwise, it will be kept there as a historical spelling, as you see here. So anyway, that's how we're going to handle the preformative vowel. Now we must come to the dissimilation of the thematic vowel. That's what's next. And so as you see, we have a lot of variations that we can have for changing that. And so if you look at section 4, chapter 30 of your grammar, I show you the various assimilation possibilities. For number 1, I talk about irregular forms. And when I say a regular form, I'm talking about a form without a vav consecutive. And so you're not going to have some type of vav consecutive like this attached to the front of it. That's what we mean by a regular form. So if we're looking at a regular non-pausal form, the kametz chatuf becomes a patach. And so the example I give you, let's say that's a kametz chatuf there. You get the holum, which you're used to now by the long A becoming O. But now the dissimilation here in a regular form without the vav consecutive, this becomes a patach. And so you say tomar like this, tomar. And so that's the dissimilation there. However, as you look at number 2, I say in regular pausal forms. So we're going to have a pause here, like a athnach. We're going to get a sere, which looks like this. And so again, in a regular form, no vav consecutive on the front, but now it's a pausal form. The dissimilation, the kametz chatuf is going to become a sere. Now, with number 3 and 4, we're going to have forms that have vav consecutive. And so if we have a vav consecutive but non-pausal forms, you can have one of 2 possibilities. You can have a form like a segol. And that's probably the most common. And so that's what you would see in a form like this, vayomer. In this form here, your kametz chatuf, which is your thematic vowel, is going to dissimilate really to a sere. But with the retraction of the stress, this final syllable is now closed unaccented. Hebrew requires a short vowel, and therefore the sere becomes a segol, as you see here, and you say vayomer like that. But you can get patach for the root achal. So for the root achal, you can get the patach. Of course, I just wrote you a cursive lamed. I hope you enjoy that. And the accent does not shift here. Vayochal is what you get here as your answer. But notice there's also the exceptional 1CS form of amar, as I have listed there. Va-omar, again, the accent does not shift, so watch out for that form also. And then finally, vav consecutive form, that's pausal. If you get that situation, and then again, what you need in this situation, here's your vav consecutive. There's your holum, of course, and now we've got to dissimilate the kametz chatuf, and what you're going to end up with here is a patach. You know, you'd expect a long kametz, but you get a patach. Patach can be a pausal form sometimes, and especially in these forms here. So again, your option is a patach. So what I want you to do now is look at the chart that I have at the end of this chapter. And again, if we could focus in on this chart. As we look at the chart, I give you 2 charts, really. I talk about the regular, that's without vav consecutive here. And then the vav consecutive forms, and you see that all these are vav consecutives. And then I have the non-pausal forms, and then the pausal forms. And as you can see, you get patach here with an exceptional form. This last form here, yochez, you get the sere. That's exceptional. You have to watch out for that form. Then down here with the pausal regular forms, they're all sere, which you like that. And the most difficult, of course, is the vav consecutive non-pausal. Normally you get segol, but with the root achal, you can get the patach. And with the 1CS only of amar, va-omar, again you will get the patach. And then finally you have vav consecutive pausal forms, here you get patach. And so again, this chart here is to show you the dissimilation options that you have. And then I drew you a little chart over here, and this little chart's very important, I think, for memorizing it. The way we like to think of this is like a stained glass window. And you have a red pane here, you have a red pane here, you have a green pane here, but then you have mostly green, but the quality of the workmanship on our stained glass window is not the best. So you get a little bit of red in this one, and you get a little, very small part of green in this over here. But basically how I have this memorized is, as I look at this, is red, red, green, green. But again, you have to memorize some of the exceptions. But if you do that and people find that helpful, again, if you don't find that helpful, forget what I said. But if you see the stained glass window here, it might help you as you master the dissimilation of the thematic vowel. All right. Now what we want to do is, of course, work a couple of examples here. And so, again, if you look at section 5 of chapter 30, I talk about forming R1 guttural Alef verbs, special cases. And so the example I give you is a call imperfect 3ms pausal. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you got a 3ms. So again, the first thing I would do is sort of start and just sort of pretend it's a strong verb, and so that's why I'm putting this yod at the front. And of course, what you'd expect is something like this, but we're not going to have these types of things. This is a special case, and so originally you're going to have a kametz chatuf, and of course it became holem in most of the forms because of the accent, closed, accented. But we're going to keep it as a kametz chatuf. And so what we're going to start with is this, with a patach. Again, with an R1 guttural, you can get a patach here, you can get a sagol, but we're going to always have patach in these special case forms. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to quiesce the R1 Alef in the silent schwa position, and then we'll lengthen the patach of the performative to a kametz, and then it goes to long O, and so we have this. So we have the holem. Now we have to think about the dissimilation. And so we have the form that we're looking at here is a call imperfect 3ms pausal. And so this is a regular pausal. So again, if you think of that chart, what we're looking for here is a regular pausal. So I would be really in this area right here or in this box over here, because again, this box reflects this. And so what I need is a seireh for our dissimilation. And so we take the original kametz chatuf and replace it with a seireh. It's a pausal form. And so you say yo mer like this. And so this is your answer. And then in section 6 we talk about parsing R1 guttural first alefs, the special cases. And again, the first thing you have to do is eliminate your boxes and your colors. And so as you see the form I'm giving you, vayomer, you see there you have a vav consecutive on the front. That immediately tells you you're dealing with some type of imperfect. And the first thing you can do is get rid of the boxes, because with that holem like that, and there's really no box that you know of yet. There'll be a box later that's similar to this in a later weak verb, but not yet. So if you see that holem, you know right now you're looking at a special case. The next thing you want to do is look for some type of performatives. And so in the example that we're parsing here, of course, is this. The first thing I notice is this yod. I know I'm in a call. There's no boxes. It's a call imperfect, and it's a 3ms. And now the only thing I have to do is account for that sagol. And of course, that's just a dissimilation from the holem. It's a vav consecutive form that is non-pausal. You expect sagol for amar. Again, if it was achal, to eat, then I would expect a patach here. So again, the parsing and the forming of these are something very similar to what you've had so far. Now look at section 7 of chapter 30, and I talk about putting pronominal suffixes on these verbs. But really, there's only one verb you really have to worry about right now, and that's achal. It takes pronominal suffixes. The original thematic vowel is a kametz chatuf, and therefore when you attach a pronominal suffix, the original kametz chatuf will usually reduce to a vocal schwa, and so that should not be a problem for you there. One last thing I'd like to point out about these special cases is that these special cases, although they just are really six verbs, that again, if you look at section 1, I list those verbs. Right now, you're really only worrying about 4 of them. Amar, achal, and avad, that's 3, but then skip over and take achaz, that's the 4th one. It's only those 4 that you really have to worry about now. The other 2, afa and ava, we're going to have to wait later for that because that's also final weak. They're doubly weak, really. And so we will not worry about those 2 forms until we get to chapter 37, and at that time we will. There's one other form I do want to bring to your attention, and it's so common in Hebrew we do need to look at it. And that is going back again to amar. And the infinitive construct form is emor. And this is what you would expect. There's really no problem here. This is an infinitive construct. You have the holem vowel, just like katol, no problem there. And you have a composite schwa under your R1 Alef. And of course, it's the sagol variety, the chetef sagol, because again, it's an Alef. If it were an ayin, a chet, a hey, something like that, you would expect a chetef patach. But as you know, with infinitive constructs, very frequently you'll have a lamed attached to the front of it. And so what you would expect to happen is you would get sagol, the corresponding short vowel. But in reality, that's not what happens. What happens is the Alef, even though it has the composite schwa, quiesces. And when this quiesces, we're going to have to lengthen the sagol to a sere, and the answer is going to be lemor. Now, this is not something totally new to you. If you remember when we attached the inseparable prepositions to Elohim, we ended up with Lelohim, Belohim, Kelohim, and we got the same thing. So the same phenomenon that happened to Elohim when we attach pronominal suffix, inseparable prepositions, the same thing is happening here with this infinitive construct and again, it's just this particular root right here, amar. And so we're going to end up with lemor. And so remember that, keep that in mind. That's something very important for you to remember. Well, that is R1 Guttural Alef special cases. And now you need to answer the questions and do the drills.